Hi everyone, I'm Obscure Girl. I like movies. I like weird movies. I like weird, obscure movies that I feel like no one is talking about, whether it be something that got released too long ago, or something that was poorly marketed and so no one watched, or if it was just something that you thought was a fever dream when you were five. I love talking about those movies, and I made this channel to start getting conversation going about these movies. So, without any further ado, today's movie we're going to talk about a much newer obscure movie. This movie came out in 2023. It had started filming in, I want to say, 2015, but then it got stuck in development hell for like 8 years while they were working on the CGI, which I will say the CGI it's not bad. It's nothing really to write home about, but it's still pretty decent. It doesn't rely very heavily on CGI, but it is there and it is pretty cool. The movie I'm talking about is Wonderwell. I smacked the table and the other black or lava lamp came back on. I need a new lava lamp. So anyway, the reason I want to talk about Wonderwell is because it was Carrie Fisher's last film. She passed away only a couple weeks before or after she was done filming her stuff for it. And Carrie Fisher is an actress that meant a lot to me, not just because she was a very funny actress, not just because Princess Leia and being one of the original cinema girl bosses in what was normally a mostly male dominated genre, but also because she was a fighter on the forefront for mental health awareness and being, treating mental health the same way you would treat physical health. And I thought that was amazing about her. I loved that, she went through a lot of stuff in her life and she was open to sharing about that. She was actually a Nepo baby, but from one of the most scandal stricken Hollywood couples in history, which was pretty cool. I mean, not for her, obviously. Her dad left her mom for Elizabeth Taylor, but still, it's a pretty interesting story. And I just think that she was amazing. And I think that, a lot of people think that Star Wars was her last movie, and it wasn't. It was Wonderwell. So I want to just kind of bring attention to it because I feel like no one has heard of this. I only saw it because I was scrolling on my obscure pages like I do, and this had popped up and caught my undivided attention because I love this genre of, I kind of consider them like B fantasy movies. They make a lot of them today that just kind of get streamed on Amazon Prime or something, but they're very much fairy tale stories with a decent amount of CGI in them, with sometimes sillier stories and sometimes with more like ridiculous stories. But sometimes you find a gem in there that you're really gonna, hold space with. So Wonderwell, I think, it's not a phenomenal movie, but I do think it's something worth watching at least once. It is a coming of age story. It's about a little girl named Violet who thinks she might be a witch because flowers respond to her and she feels magic inside of her. Her family is pretty messed up. Her parents are constantly fighting. Her dad is constantly like ogling all over his, I want to say, boss, kind of. I think he works in some kind of like promotion for this lady who runs her own fashion studio. Um, Played by Rita Ora, who she was fantastic in this as well, playing like the bad witch kind of character. Not far off from her portrayal of the Red Queen or the Queen of Hearts from Descendants 4. Yes, I watched Descendants 4. Now, when I say flowers respond to Violet, I mean they very clearly show magical things happening around plants in Violet. There's a scene very early on where she puts her hand by a plant in the house and a vine of it wraps around her wrist with a little flower on the end. So they very clearly show straight up magic does exist in this. So Violet is with her sister and with her family. Her sister really wants to be a model. She's starving herself for it. It's really unhealthy, her obsession with being a model. And when they go to Italy to, do this whole fashion thing, um, you see very quickly that the movie itself is a giant metaphor or a giant window into coming of age, hormones, the need to be perfect, and sexual exploitation, to be totally honest. The first time I watched this, I was a little, oh, okay, like you don't really know who the movie's for. It's PG-13, but it is framed almost like a kids movie, but with some very adult themes in it, like sexual exploitation. So I would say this is more of a movie for young teens or, older teens that have been through it looking back, um, as just kind of a window into moving on in maturity while losing innocence while maintaining innocence. I would almost say it's about losing innocence and having, the wool taken off over your eyes of childhood, but while maintaining goodness. And I think that's kind of a big overarching theme in this. You've got the two witches played by Carrie Fisher and Rita Ora. And it seems very much like there's a battleground for almost like the souls of teenage girls that once they start hitting puberty, once they start, getting their hormones and everything, that there's a battle between staying good and going straight into the dark side. Um, and by dark side, again, I mean the need to be perfect, the need to be beautiful, the need to have people pay attention to you no matter what, using, sexual wiles in order to get your way, versus maintaining some form of innocence. And of course, like the metaphor has to do with a garden as well. It's a whole thing. So, without any further ado, I'm going to get into the full spoiler telling of the movie and what happens in it. Um, Again, if you're not a spoiler review kind of person, please go check out the movie and then come back and we can talk about it and it'll be great. If you want to know what you're getting yourself into, kind of, stay and chat. So, like I said, the movie starts out with you get a lot of information in a short amount of time while also being confused a little bit. Like I said, this movie isn't 100% good. It's not phenomenal, but it is definitely worth the watch, I would say. So anyway, starts off with Violet saying, she thinks she's a witch. You see the tree, like the vines wrapping around her wrists, and she says that she is casting a spell to bake her family back together. Because again, mom and dad are fighting. Dad is constantly lusting over his boss, the Rita Ora character. The mom fully aware of this and is just not happy, and the daughter's constantly talking about how the mom is just depressed. The mom, Chloe, by the way, the dad's name is Adam. The mom's name is Chloe. Chloe is played by Marguerite from Ever After, the Drew Barrymore movie. So, in case you were having the same mental, like, what do I know her from moment, that's it. You're welcome. And then you see her sister in her room, just like, don't feed me, and just obsessing over being a model. And the sister's just kind of like, no one here is happy anymore, and I want to bake us back together. To which she ends up burning the cookies, and then she thinks everything that happens from this point forward is her fault, that she destroyed her family because she messed up the spell. Which I find kind of adorable and absolutely something that a kid would think. They would think that, when the whole family's unhappy, it's their fault. I I know I felt it when I was a kid. I'm sure, a lot of other kids feel the same way. They take that onto themselves. So this whole movie takes place in Italy. There is this beautiful little courtyard that they spend most of it in, and just this little town that's walled off with the woods outside of the wall. Uh, so you start off them going to Italy. There is okay. This is when you really just start getting into really the meat of this movie. There is a line of teenage girls in a black bra, black underwear, and black stilettos, and you just have their parents sitting in a corner, pretty much, as Rita Ora, who her character's name is Yana, and Franco, who is her photographer, and they are just flat out judging them in their most vulnerable, underwear laden state as teenage girls. And them just walking around, and Franco flat out says, like, not much to be excited about. Horrifying! Absolutely horrifying. If I heard someone saying that as I'm standing in mass in my underwear, oh my god. So, and then just going down the line saying, like, yes, no kind of thing, like, just And I get models go through that, and I'm so horrified for them. But to do that also as a teenage girl is so damaging. And your parents are just sitting there watching. I can't believe it. It's just so uncomfortable, and you're just kind of laughing at how just like, oh my god, this scene is. But then you see Yana making eyes with Adam as she walks past the sister whose name is Savannah, and she's just like, oh, I don't know, this one, and making it kind of clear that she's favoring Savannah because she's making eyes with the dad right in front of the mom. Once again, the mom sees all of it. There is nothing being hidden from this mom. The poor woman. No wonder she's so depressed, and they like show her drinking all the time too. Which, again, yeah, yeah. And then you've got Violet there, who's been just rocking back in her chair, very clearly bored. It's a very quiet room, so you can hear everything that, Yana and Franco are saying. But Violet seems very clearly bored. Her sister's getting all the attention. She's not, and then her chair ends up tilting back, and her parents are just like, oh my God, get out of here. But Yana sees and meets Violet at this point and immediately recognizes the witch in her. Like, it's very, very clear she sees the flower around her wrist. She locks eyes, immediately knows this is another witch, which makes it very clear that Yana's a witch as well. Um, so then, fast forward, Violet leaves and is just hanging out by the statue and sees this little boy, not little boy, he's probably the same age as her, driving a Vespa, where he then, comes off and talks to her and everything. We find out this is Daniele. He is Yana's stepson, which there's no dad in the movie or the picture, so it gives serious, like, wicked stepmom vibes where, dad's dead and she's the guardian kind of thing, and he's just kind of stuck doing her bidding most of the time. But he very clearly does not think much of Yana, doesn't think much of the models that work with Yana. He ends up calling them cattle at one point and makes fun of them for the faces they make and says they're always mooing, like, moo, like, pretend I didn't do that. I'm not cutting it out, just pretend I didn't do it. But so it makes it very clear, and Violet is immediately kind of smitten with this boy and is, you can tell it's kind of a first crush kind of situation, and he's seeming very attracted to her as well, and it's kind of a cute little puppy love thing. But then, they have to separate because Yana's calling for Daniele to run some errand or something, and, Violet's time to go. So then they go home that night, and all of a sudden Violet's saying, like, well, why can't I be a model too? If Savannah's doing it, why can't I do it? And Savannah at this point is like 16, 17, and Violet is like 11, 12, I would say. And the dad is very, very anti the idea of Violet becoming a model, even though he just seems resigned to Savannah becoming one. But it's very much like he wants to keep Violet as his little girl, and he is a dad who's very awkward about trying to talk to his daughter about sex. So he makes up this drain metaphor, which is supposed to be a sex metaphor. I'm a grown woman, and even I thought this was confusing. But he talks about, it's like a drain. What's like a drain? It's like a drain. And once you pull the drain, like, everything goes out, but sometimes you could let some dark stuff come in. That's his metaphor. Please explain in the comments if you understood it a little bit better than me. It seems like a very vague, very broad metaphor. I don't know, but they use it later, trust me. So Violet ends up going back. They're in the courtyard. They're doing the photo shoot there. Franco is not vibing with Savannah at all, and he keeps talking down to her, and he thinks he's God's gift, pretty much, and she's just some idiot girl who doesn't know how to pose for him right. And, Violet and Violet's mom is seeing all of this, and they're just like, yeah, that's what a model does, I guess. And the dad is off with Yana somewhere at some point. And while Franco is not vibing with Savannah, he is very clearly making eyes at Chloe, the mom, while the mom is seeing Adam, the dad, and Yana off talking, and making eyes at each other. So she's kind of like, all right, well, someone's making eyes at me too. Guess I'm not, a waste of space or whatever she's probably thinking in her poor depressed state that her husband's been clearly, if not cheating on her, very much wanting to. And then Violet is super bored and is saved when Daniele shows up on his Vespa. There's some tension with Daniele and Franco, but he ends up just taking off, and then Violet goes after him, and the mom's just like, okay, just don't leave the walls, meaning the walls of the town. She's like, promise me you won't leave the walls. So of course she promises, and of course she's gonna leave the walls. Duh. It's laid on thicker than butter. So she goes and talks to Daniele, and he tells her that there's a witch in the woods, and almost kind of not dares her, but she sees this as a challenge to kind of impress this boy. Also, if she thinks she's a witch, she kind of wants to go see if there's another witch who can maybe tell her about herself. So, of course, she leaves Daniele and she leaves the wall, and she ends up going out into the woods. And the flowers are responding to her too, even maybe more so than they were at home. And she asks herself, there's like some inner monologue here too. She's like, is love the key? Why is this happening to me? And then she finds Carrie Fisher, who is Hazel. There was also a cow that appears and disappears at will. No one explains it. We just accept it. Violet immediately goes up to Hazel and asks her straight up, just deadpan, are you the witch? And Carrie goes, well, I'm not the witch, I'm a witch. She's like, what makes you think I'm a witch anyway? Before she says that, and she's like, oh, well, a little boy told me. And she's like, straight up, in the most Carrie Fisher canon way, if you believe everything that little boys tell you, you're going to have a very rough life. And I'm just like, this is what we needed in Carrie Fisher's last film. We needed that, thank you. So then Hazel asks Violet, would you like to see my garden? And so she takes her, and it's this whole movie, especially at this point forward, has a very Secret Garden meets Through the Looking Glass vibe, which I absolutely love and adore, just the vibes of it. Anything that has Secret Garden vibes, I'm going to be all about. I feel like that's kind of low key core memory how a lot of women, my age especially today, find their fashion sense or their decor sense, especially like anything with flowers, anything with mushrooms, anything with keys, especially antique looking keys. That is a core memory from our Secret Garden childhood where we watched the movie or read the book, and some part of us became obsessed, and now it's trickled into our fashion sense and decor sense today. Hi there, Obscure Girl from the editing room here. Just realizing that Secret Garden walked so that cottagecore could run. Like our childhood obsessions with Secret Garden aesthetic and Alice in Wonderland aesthetic has led to the cottagecore craze of today. Now, thank you. Continue with the program. Anyway, takes her to the garden, and again, the flowers are responding to Violet there, but they're also responding to Hazel. And they have a very similar thing. So it's Hazel showing her, like, yes, I am a sister witch. Um, and she goes, takes her to this apple tree, and Violet's like, oh, can I have one? And Hazel goes, yeah, if you can reach it. And there's a ladder there that's kind of standing on its own. And Violet tries to climb it and can't reach the apple. And then one of the rungs she's standing on gives out, falls down, blacks out, wakes up in Hazel's house. And while she's unconscious, Hazel is reading tarot cards that are animated and moving around and kind of showing a picture, which I absolutely loved that. The CGI was pretty darn good in that as well. But it tells a story of basically like the trial of the two witches, and there's going to be something going on, and that her sister's going to be after her. That Yana is going to be after her. Okay, spoilers, they're sisters. Fine. You made me spoil it early. Whatever. It's not that hard. But anyway. And she's just like, she's too young. Like, like she's too young to be going through this. Which is again another metaphor that this is talking about loss of innocence, puberty, maturity, things like that. But Violet wakes up and Hazel makes her tea and everything, and she tries to kind of like slip something into the tea, I think. Never any clarity on what that is, but maybe it's something that's supposed to help, or maybe it's something that's supposed to make her just fall asleep so she can avoid being, Yana's new plaything and test subject, whatever she is going to be. But um, Carrie, or sorry, I want to keep calling her Carrie Fisher. Hazel and Violet are having this conversation about flowers, and Hazel asks Violet, "Well, you know what flowers are for?" And Violet's like, "Flowers aren't for anything. They're just flowers." And Hazel goes, "Well, actually, they're sex organs." And Violet's all like, "Ew, what? Okay." And she's like, "Yeah." And looks over at this pot of Venus flytraps that Hazel has next to her. And she's like, "What about those?" She's like, "These actually are not sex organs. These are what you think is the flower, is actually its stomach." And Violet's like, "Its stomach?" And Kira's all like, "Yeah, these are carnivorous." So again, just all kinds of metaphors for, you know, sex and maturity, but also metaphors for some things are out there to get you that will consume you or at least bite. Um, Lots and lots and lots of metaphors. So, of course, this takes place in a garden. I guess this movie is just kind of something that parents can turn on for their teens when they're starting to go through all of this to make them just as confused as most talks would make them anyway. Let's be real, but at least this one has pretty images. So then they start talking about power, and Violet immediately thinks that Hazel is talking about sex, talking about how sex is power, which is kind of what her sister thinks, which is what, Yana has been instilling in her sister ever since they met. So then Violet talks about her dad and tells Hazel about the metaphor. And, she's like, "Yeah, my dad doesn't know how to talk about any of this stuff. Like, he said it was all a big plug." And Hazel just goes, "Well, yeah, do you want to see it?" And we're all like, "What is going on?" Like, she's woken up in a stranger's house who claims she's a witch, she's throwing something in her tea, and now they're talking about sex. Like, danger, Will Robinson kind of thing. But then Hazel takes Violet to this part in the woods and makes her go forward a little bit alone. And she finds in the middle of this clearing in the forest a giant moss covered plug. Just there. Just a big, big old plug. And Violet starts hearing this voice that sounds a lot like Carrie Fisher, but more of a dramatized, almost monsterish kind of voice. Monsterish? Yep, that's a word now. Kind of voice. And goes, "Open it. I'm a friend. I'm only trying to help." And so Violet pulls and pulls and opens it and looks inside, and she sees this living well. And when I say living, I mean it has all kinds of like living, like moss and almost algae looking, but it's very pretty and brightly colored. And on the bottom at the other end, she sees her wearing a different outfit. And she has a conversation with this other version of her. And the other version of her basically tricks her into falling into the well where they switch places. And now Violet is super cold and she's just on this other side and she's fairly terrified because she's like, "Okay, no, I want to go back. I want to go back." And the other version of her says that they can switch by the next morning. They have to switch by sunrise the next morning, otherwise, they're both stuck on that side forever. So then the other girl just runs away and just like, "Okay, bye." And Violet turns around and sees this giant floating face. There's no eyes, there's an open mouth, even though it talks, the mouth never closes. There's like almost tentacle kind of things floating behind it. And this is where we find the source of the monsterfied Carrie Fisher voice. So the face is already like talking to Violet, and Violet is like, "Oh my gosh, are you gonna eat me? Just like make it quick," kind of thing. And so the face is not planning to eat her, but is teasing her about wanting to eat her. So then Violet runs off, and she finds this side's version of Hazel, and uh, Hazel's all just like, "Oh, hi," and Violet's like, "Well, everything looks the same," and Hazel's just like, "Does it?" And Violet's like, "Well, I guess not." So the well is kind of already at this point a metaphor for the transition of going into maturity, losing the blindness that kind of comes, the naivety that comes from being a kid. So everything on this side is more of a, you're seeing things clearly here. And this is Violet actually seeing what's actually going on. Because before she's just been blaming herself and been very oblivious to what's been going on with her family. She just knows they're unhappy. And from this point forward, she's going to see things as they are. So Hazel kind of explains the rules to her. She gives her new clothes. She offers her some wine, to which Violet's like, no, I'm good. And Hazel is kind of like, oh, you can just stay here. You can just wait until the sun comes up and we'll just hang out right over here and you don't have to go out there and you don't have to do anything. But also lays down the rules like, you're going to see things more clearly on this side. So why don't you just hang out with me so you don't see anything you don't want to see? So Violet asks Hazel, are the decisions I make on this side going to affect anything that happens on the other side? And Carrie says, sorry, Hazel says something along the lines of, uh, not any more than the pair of shoes you picked today is going to affect what happened 10 years ago. So it's like, okay, do whatever you want here. If there's no consequences on the other side, okay, cool. But she takes off, and Violet runs away when Hazel's back is turned, and Hazel just goes, all right, well, I hope you picked the right path. So there's this mini scene of Violet trying to make her way back out. And when this happens, we get to a scene between Hazel and Yana. And this, I would say, is probably the coolest scene in the whole movie, is just this little tete-a-tete with these two. Uh, they go to neutral ground, so they end up having this conversation in an abandoned church, which is where you find out they are, in fact, sisters. That the flower that's wrapped around Violet's wrist and that's wrapped around Hazel's wrist is the key from Yana and Hazel's mother. And Hazel makes a comment to Yana, like, would you even recognize our mother now? Would she recognize you? Everything that blooms in you has been killed and is destroyed. So again, garden metaphor. Um, but Yana and Hazel are basically trying to both stake claims over Violet. And Yana's like, I have her sister, her dad, and soon probably her mom in my pocket. It is inevitable that she will end up with me and I will get our mother's key and Paradiso will be mine. Now, then Hazel's like, Paradiso will never be yours, can never be yours. Paradiso is mine, Inferno is yours. And again, I'm just like, oh, okay. And Paradiso, okay, all right, got a little Dante going on. Very cool, very Italian. I like it. And yeah, so Hazel has this great line to her, there's nothing left to bloom in Yana, which I thought was just like, okay, all right, that's a solid line. So Violet makes her way back to the town, and things are immediately a little on the different side. First of all, she's wearing this like deep velvet red dress that Hazel had given her, and she's going through this alleyway, and all of these grown men are kind of calling out to her all of a sudden, and some trippy stuff happens with this weird parade. Anyway, then she finds her dad and Yana in this bakery with their hands all over each other. And she's so horrified, she runs away, doesn't know how to deal with it. Um, and we fast forward to Savannah meeting up with her, and she's all just like, what are you wearing? And oh my God, are your boobs growing? So immediately, like, even her sister is starting to objectify her a little bit and just being like, oh my God, like, you're getting boobs now, which is kind of what, a lot of this is referring to. Again, the metaphor is laid on thick like butter. But they fast forward to having dinner with Yana and Franco and then her family, and they're showing some of the pictures that they had taken of Savannah that day. And all of a sudden, these pictures start getting more and more risque. And the parents are completely horrified. And, the Adam says to Chloe, I thought you were watching this. Like, how did you let these pictures happen? So he's just blaming the mom for even letting it happen, not even bringing it up to the photographer who's taking the pictures or the woman who asked the pictures to be taken. Just flat out blaming Chloe. Again, where Franco's hitting on Chloe, and the dad is immediately mollified and talked down because it's what Yana wants, so that's just how it is, and they're going to fight about it later. And then Franco and Yana bring up this big party that's happening tonight to launch the new fashion line, where Savannah's going to be the guest of honor because she's the new face of Yana's new fashion line. And both parents are immediately like, no, we're not doing, they're not going. Violet's too young and she took off today. And also, Savannah took off during the photo shoot with Daniele. Daniele was taking pictures. They wanted a few of Savannah on the back of Daniele's Vespa. And Daniele was like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. And he takes off with Savannah on the back of the Vespa. So they were mad at her for taking off, and they were mad at Violet for also taking off at a different time. So they're like, no, they're not going to the party. And Savannah's all just like, oh, I'm going to that party. So Violet catches Savannah getting ready for said party and just calls her out, like point blank, calls her out saying that Yana's just using you and she's exploiting you, and you're not even going to come out looking good in all of this. Like, you're going to come out looking really bad, and Yana doesn't care about you. And so Savannah, being super hurt and just biting back, goes, you know what, I think I kind of like Daniele. Like, we were really cute and close together on his Vespa today, and is really just kind of sexualizing Daniele in front of her sister, who she knows has a crush on him, and also is way too young for her, like, in the first place. And it's all really gross and uncomfortable. And Violet's all just like, did you kiss? Did you kiss? And Savannah's like, not yet. So, she's feeling hurt by what her sister said about her, even though her sister was, I think, coming from a place of love, but also jealous and accusatory. So then she just bit back, being like, yeah, I'm going to take your man. Cut to outside, where Daniele's sitting on his Vespa outside their hotel room holding this ribbon. And it almost seems like he is crushing on Savannah now after their little escapade earlier. And then you cut to Franco, who's surrounded by models and is, just bragging about how, Yana might make the clothes, but he's what's making them, pop, and he's what's making them famous. And then cut to the parents inside, who are fully going at each other fight wise, not the other way, about the pictures. How could she let this happen? And then finally the mom's like, well, you just want Yana, but you're just willing to sacrifice our daughter's innocence and just exploit her so you can be with Yana. And they're finally just like, marriage over. And of course, Violet hears all of this, and the dad sees that she heard all of this, and she just runs out crying. The mom runs out. Franco sees her, goes after the mom. Oh, so then Savannah goes to go to the party, and Violet is looking for a fight at this point, so she just goes after her sister and just wants to fight about Daniele even more. And then again, the sister just kind of stomps on her dreams and takes off. And then Daniele finds Violet, who's just super, super depressed about everything. And they actually have this cute moment where they have this conversation about, how they're both just kind of waiting to grow up, kind of thing. Like, they're just waiting to be grown up. And he ends up giving her the ribbon, and they end up having their first kiss, which is super cute. But then Savannah shows up and craps all over it, just as absolutely ruins the whole thing. She calls out Violet for some of the things she said in anger about Daniele earlier, when she thought that Daniele liked her. And Daniele's just like, I'm getting out of this, and he just runs away on his Vespa. So then the girls split up again after just, destroying each other, basically. And that's where Violet runs into her mom making out with Franco in a dark alleyway. So she's just seen both of her parents being unfaithful in the span of a couple of hours. This poor, poor girl is just going through the ringer today. Seeing things for what they are is not fun, especially when it's happening all at once sometimes. So now the mom is going after her, and the dad is still going after her because, they're all just super worried about Violet, which they should be. She's having a day. Oh, so then Daniele has this run in with Franco's like minion. There's just this super douchey guy that does Franco's bidding, and he ends up punching out Daniele and taking the Vespa and taking off with it. And then like flat out threatens to kill him. Like, it escalates super quickly, and it almost feels like this guy is Daniele's version of Savannah for Violet. It's almost like a big brother type situation, but one that has already gone to the dark side and is not redeemable the way Violet and Savannah might still be redeemed at some point. So Savannah makes her way to the party. Franco finds her and is all like, oh, good, you made it. All right, let's get you ready. And she's like, "Oh, I thought I already was ready." And they're like, "No, trust me." So they take her up to this room to make her look just like the rest of Yana's models. Then, meanwhile, you see Violet finds that face again in the woods, and she's done. Violet is done. She's like, "Okay, eat me. Just do it. Just eat me. I want to be done." And the face is like, "I thought you were braver than that. Giving up? Really?" And Violet's just like, "No, I hate it here. Like, I want to go back to my side. I just want to be done already. I want to switch back." And the face goes, "What if it was always like this on both sides?" And Violet is still very much like, "No, no, there's no way, there's no way. Like, I need to go back. Things weren't this horrible over there. Things are just dark and horrible here, and I don't want any of it." And the face is like, "Are you sure you just didn't see it?" So again, to that whole like, she's lost that naivety, she's lost that innocence of childhood and is now seeing things for as they really are. So we flip back to the party. Um, Daniele is going after the guy to go find his Vespa, finds out the guy threw his Vespa into like the river or whatever body of water they have around there. And he sees Savannah, who is all made up just to look like one of Yana's minions, and just goes, "What have you done to her?" And he's so disgusted. And, they're all just like, "Oh, we've made her beautiful." And he's like, "She was beautiful before. Now you've just made her like all the others." Which I thought was really cool how, the boy was idolizing her for a minute and she's like, "Ugh, what have you done? She doesn't have to be like everyone else to be beautiful. She already was." Now, the rest of the movie is kind of flipping back and forth between Violet's like adventures in the woods and Savannah's escapades at this one party. So now Violet is back in the woods, and there is this giant Venus flytrap in this like ravine kind of thing. And before she had actually seen it, and she was able to jump on it and jump across before things snapped on her, this time it just snaps, and she's like, "Okay, eat me." Like she's really, really done. This poor thing has just been through it. And then you hear the voice kind of, calling out to her and stuff like that as she's going down the stem of this Venus flytrap, and there's some like thorns on the inside she's able to grab onto. And then we see Savannah as her sister is being eaten. We see her going into this room where Yana is sitting with all of her models in this candelabra laden room, which is very like coven initiation meets Idus Wide Shut party kind of vibes. And she walks in, and Yana invites her to be one of her family, and she's like, "Yes, I want that. Yes, no hesitation." So then Yana, as her initiation, makes her burn a flower, which, again, metaphor, thick as butter. Um, but she does. She burns the flower, and that's that. Oh, and then we go back to Violet, who is again still in the stem, and the ribbon that she has fallen off, whereas also the flower that she had earlier has fallen off. The ribbon goes down into what you can only assume is the Venus flytrap's stomach acid. But she follows the ribbon to quote unquote safety. And at this point, Daniele has also gone into the woods to find his Vespa, and he finds it destroyed, which does not make him happy. But then he sees Violet on this riverbank, and he like goes and saves her and wakes her up because she almost drowned and everything. So at least we have that going for her. Daniele to the rescue. And Daniele warns her that her sister is now one of them. And Violet, who has got her second wind on life, I guess, is just like, "We need to go save my sister." So they rush to the party, and they go up to this room where they hear Yana and Franco talking from the outside of the room. And this is things getting really creepy. Franco asks Savannah, "Are you ready to take your career to the next level?" And Yana answers for her, "She's ready." So they bust into this room as Franco is sitting on a bed with Yana and Savannah. And Savannah's very much like kind of holding herself in almost the fetal position. But Franco's about to be taking some pictures of Savannah in bed. You see where we're going here. So that was why on my first viewing of this, I was very much like, "Oh my God, they went there? Like, is this a kids movie?" And then later I was like, "Oh, it's PG-13. Well, that makes sense. Who is this for?" And after thinking about it again, I think it's for people in that age range almost, as messed up as that might be. But so Violet runs up to Savannah and is trying to talk her out of it, trying to pull her away. And Yana's all like, she's already made her choice. And Violet says to Savannah, I love you. And I guess that can be very much portrayed as, that cheesy love has the power to save us all, saved with the power of love kind of situation. But in this one, I do think it works because I think what Savannah is doing all of this for is to be loved in her own way. And finding out she's had that all along from her sister is enough to snap her out of it and get her out of the room, but not before we realize that most of the situation has actually been a trap for Violet from Yana, because Yana really wants Violet's key and wants Violet on her side so she can get the key to Paradiso. And Violet, of course, breaks her sister out of it with the power of love. Like, yeah, I get it, but it works. Kind of, it works. And then they rush out, and Daniele takes Franco's camera and smashes it, which was also just awesome. Yay, Franco sucks. And they run off, and they run off to the woods together. So Violet, Savannah, Daniele all run to the forest, which is filled with mist, and you can barely see anything. So of course, all three of them get separated. So Yana and Franco end up following them into the woods because Yana is not done with this fight yet. And when they follow them into the woods, her and Franco end up running into the face, which Franco, who is not aware of the supernatural side of the business he's currently working in, is freaked out. Rightfully so. This face is gigantic. It's bigger than them, and it's just a face that's just hollowed out with this creepy Carrie Fisher twisted voice. And Yana immediately knows exactly what's going on with this face, even though also kind of not. It's weird. Like, she knows this is something to do with her, obviously, because she's magic, but doesn't see any, like, recognition fully in this. And Yana is yelling at Franco to kill the face. And I'm sorry, I don't remember how the sword ended up getting involved in this, but there's a sword somehow. And Franco just takes off. He just leaves Yana. So then Yana ends up like grabbing the sword, and she's facing off with the face, which I think in the not maybe credits, but also like maybe in the subtitles, it's credited as like Forest Guardian, something like that, or Forest Spirit. So then the face ends up saying to Yana, "You're afraid of me. You're afraid of the me inside of you." Meaning you're afraid of the goodness, the innocence that is still inside of you. You want to squash that. And then Yana ends up stabbing the face, and the key, which is that flower, ends up popping up where the face was, and Yana goes to grab it, and it retreats back into the ground. So even with the face defeated, Yana's not getting the key. And you also hear Carrie Fisher's voice going, "Would you even recognize me if you saw me again?" So kind of insinuating that the face was their mother the whole time, and that Yana didn't even recognize her anymore. So then Yana runs into the forest and finds Violet, who's still separated from the other two, and the key appears to Violet. And she takes it, and it's back wrapped around her wrist. And Yana is standing off with her with a sword, telling her to give her the key. And Violet's like, "I will happily, freely, willingly give you this key if you leave me, my sister, and Daniele alone for the rest of time." And she gives her the bracelet. And Yana's immediately like, "You simple idiot, you'll believe anything." And then the key disintegrates around Yana's hand and ends up right back around Violet's wrist. So no matter what, like, the bloom is gone. She's not getting it back, kind of thing. And when the key ends up going back to Violet's, Yana then turns into flowers, which turns into butterflies that fly away. Yana is done. I guess that what she got her bloom back in the very end, kind of thing. But Yana's gone now. Meanwhile, though, while all this has happened, the sun's come up, and Violet's not back at the drain. So she is not switching back. So she goes to find Hazel. Again, there's a cow appearing, disappearing, this whole thing. She goes to Hazel's house, and at first when she goes in, she doesn't see Hazel, but she sees a candle version of the face. So it's like the face with a candle burning inside of it, and it's like this quiet moment of like, was that Carrie Fisher the whole time? Is this a shrine to her now gone mother? Like, really confusing, I'm not gonna lie. I think you could take it either way, possibly. But then she goes outside and you see Carrie Fisher is there again. Hazel is back. She's not dead, so that's something. And then Hazel ends up giving Violet the apple that she wasn't able to reach at the beginning, and says like, you were able to reach it after all. And Violet's like, I fell off the ladder, and she's like, it's not all about how you get there, kind of thing. And then Hazel leaves Violet with, life can be just as magical as this garden, but much more fun. So then Hazel, or Violet says to Hazel, I guess I'm stuck on this side. And Hazel's like, that's one way of looking at it. So kind of saying that, like, she can never have the wool pulled back over her eyes. She can't go back to the way things were. But she's accepted that, and she's accepted that this is the world that she lives in now. So then Violet says goodbye to Hazel, runs off into the woods where she meets back up with Savannah and Daniele. Savannah and her have this really big hug, and Savannah has almost like this weight kind of lifted off of her, it seems. She's not, doesn't have her edge anymore. She seems happier now that she's not, she can eat food again. And also, none of this is disparaging against models, first of all. I know some of the comments I've come off with might come off that way. I have nothing but respect for models. I just feel like Savannah in this movie wants to be model for the wrong reasons and is willing to go the wrong route at maybe too young an age in order to get there. Like, she should not be taking risque photos at 16, kind of thing. So again, nothing against models, but and obviously not skinny shaming or anything like that. Um, Eating disorders are a serious, serious business, and I think this movie is kind of cautioning against that kind of behavior into ending up where you feel like you have to be so perfect that you end up getting an eating disorder. So again, nothing against any of that, just against Savannah's way of going about all of this. And now Savannah seems lighter and happier and, not willing to go back to her childhood, but willing to not be in such a hurry to grow up, I should say. And that's the end of the movie, is them running off, in the field together back to the town. So that's Wonderwell. My final thoughts. This is a movie about losing your innocence while remaining innocent. And I know that's going to sound weird, but it's a movie about losing the naivety of childhood and, losing that innocence of childhood while you're going through hormones and you're getting urges and things like that, but also being good and being true to yourself. And I know that's super cliche, but it is kind of rounded out like a kid's movie. So the cliche fits. It's, yeah, a movie about choosing the good. It's about, you can grow up and you can, go forward and you can make your own decisions, but try and make the decisions that make you feel good and don't make you become like Yana. Don't make you lose the bloom. And again, I don't think that's like, not in the metaphor sense of like back in the day, like you don't want the bloom rubbed off, or a woman that loses her bloom is worth nothing. Not like that at all. Not in the slightest. It's more just not losing that sense of inherent goodness and sense of life about you. I think it's more about a sense of life. Like, you see certain people and, like Yana, and just dead inside. Just barren wasteland, just doing whatever it takes, no matter how many people they have to hurt, including themselves, to get what they want. When they talk about bloom in this, I think they're talking about willing to grow and willing to make the right choices and willing to see the good in things still, not the antique way of bloom and how disgusting that is. Also, I think the first time I watched this movie, it was a lot more scandalous than the second time I watched the movie. Second time, I was like, oh, well, it's not as bad as I thought it was in that first take. I also took like 4 pages of notes while I was watching the movie the second time, hence why I keep looking to the left. But also, I think they could have made this movie shorter and kept the same message. There's a lot of filler and fluff, and it can be kind of slow paced at times. There's a lot of visual parts of this movie, which again, if you're going to spend 8 years in production hell, you might as well make it pretty. But my final thought on this movie is I miss Carrie Fisher. I think this was a movie that is worth watching just so you can see Carrie Fisher's last performance, and so she could give us those last words of wisdom before she was tragically taken from us. So that is Wonderwell. Again, it's not a fantastic movie. It's not something I'm going to rave and rave about like I would with Repo or Return to Oz, but it is a movie I think that's worth watching at least once, just for the imagery and for the Carrie Fisher of it all. And if you do watch it, please let me know in the comments what you think. And if you have seen it, again, please let me know what you think. This is a channel all about starting conversations on movies that I don't think are getting enough conversations. So thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if that's your thing. Share it out if that's your thing. If you think someone would like this review or watch this movie. I've been Obscure Girl, and the rest is confetti.